But then something grand happened that changed Japanese history forever. In the far distance, slowly coming towards the shores of Japan in 1853, definitely not the Mongolians like in the past, it was a fleet of American ships commanded by Commodore Matthew C. Perry, who forced Japan to open its borders, ending Japan's isolationist policies. You know what? It's time you guys opened up. We want to bring in Megadese. Now, there was no defense against Perry's gunboats, and Japan had little choice but to agree to his demands and start trading at Japanese ports. We have no choice. The US, Great Britain, Russia, and other Western powers took advantage and started the Unequal Treaties. Yup, it was actually called that, where Japan had to allow citizens of these countries to visit or reside in Japanese territory with no levy tariffs on their imports or try them in Japanese courts, which becomes a huge issue later. Wait, now how fair is that? The shogunate's failure to oppose the Western powers angered many Japanese and even the samurai class, silently planning in the background. Just wait and see. We got something to show you. But in August 1866, after Tokugawa Yoshinobu became shogun, he struggled to maintain power as civil unrest continued. The Choshu and Satsuma domains in 1868 convinced the young Emperor Meiji and his advisors for an end to the Tokugawa shogunate. The armies of the Choshu and Satsuma soon marched on Edo, and the Bohin War led to the fall of the shogunate and the samurai. Wait, that wasn't supposed to happen. Then enters modern Japan, Meiji period. Now, Emperor Meiji was the 122nd emperor of Japan. Wow, a lot of lines of emperors. But nominal supreme power was restored to him in 1869, and the imperial family moved to Edo, which was then renamed as the name we know it as today, as Tokyo. But during this time, we find that the most powerful men in the government were actually former samurai. Yeah, they were still around, rather than the emperor, who was 15 at the time in 1868. You're too young, buddy. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything. There were some dramatic changes that happened in Japan, where the leaders of the Meiji government pushed to have Japan become a modern nation state equal to Western imperialist powers. If we can't beat them, join them. The Edo class structure disappeared. The domains of the daimyos were also gone. There were new tax reforms that came in and even lifted the bans on Christians. And railways, telegraph lines, and the universal education system sprung up. And it definitely was a new Japan with its widespread westernization. Many advisors from Western nations in fields like education, banking, law, military affairs, and transportation actually remodeled Japan's institutions. The common Japanese even started to dress differently and even had Western hairstyles. The Japanese military even started to gain power in Asia and decided to expand abroad, and believed to do so, they had to acquire its own colonies to compete with the Western colonial powers. So they decided to gain power over Hokkaido and turned its attention to China and Korea. Oh great, more war and destruction. But this time with better understanding of Western powers. In 1894, Japanese and Chinese troops clashed in Korea, and the well-led forces defeated the more numerous and better equipped military of Qin China. The Japanese government started to gain enough international prestige to renegotiate the unequal treaties the Western world had set on them. That pissed them off back in the day, and in 1902, Japan signed an important military alliance with the British. Okay, we finally sorted that one out. It was a chip on our shoulders, we needed to change, and we did it. Now, anything is possible. Russia then came onto the plate, and Japan clashed with them in expanding its power in Asia. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 05 ended with the dramatic Battle of Tsushima, which was another victory for Japan's military. Japan laid claim to Korea in 1905, followed by full annexation in 1910. Now, during this time of war, Japan also went through some rapid transition towards an industrial economy. Western technology and knowledge allowed for factories to be built to produce a wide range of goods, and the majority of Japan's exports became manufactured goods. New successful businesses started to flourish like Zaibatsu, that included Mitsubishi and Sumitomo, and great industrial growth sparked rapid urbanization all across the country. Japan started to enjoy some economic growth and people started to live longer and healthier lives. The population actually rose from 34 million in 1872 to 52 million in 1915, and a lot of socialist ideas started to spring up, entering the Taisho period. Now during this time, Japan developed stronger democratic institutions and grew in international power. There were mass protests and riots, even a riot called the Rice Riots of 1918 that increased the power of Japan's political parties. When Japan entered World War I, it actually led to sparked economic growth and earned Japan new colonies in the South Pacific seized from Germany. Japan ended up signing the Treaty of Versailles to enjoy international relations through its membership in the League of Nations. Then enters the Showa period. Emperor Hirohito's 63-year reign from 1926 to 1989 is actually known to be the longest in recorded Japanese history. Now in the beginning, it was considered a period of rise of extreme nationalism, with expansionist wars which ended with the suffering defeat of World War II. Japan was occupied by foreign powers for the first time in its history, but later re-emerged as a major world economic power. The period of 1937 would be a period to note. Now, the Empire of Japan in 1937 was definitely a violent time. Fascism and Japanese nationalism kept growing in popularity. The extreme right became influential throughout the Japanese government and society. Listen to me, follow me. During all the changes and discontent that was happening in Japan at the time, the United States opposed Japan's invasion of China and placed economic sanctions to stop Japan from getting resources to continue its war in China. And because of this, Japan decided to form an alliance with Germany and Italy in 1940, which worsened its relations with the United States. That was definitely a no-no, guys. After that, in July 1941, the United States, the UK, and the Netherlands decided to freeze all Japanese assets when Japan completed its invasion of French Indochina by occupying the southern half of the country, further increasing tension in the Pacific. Guys, you are pushing our buttons. That's our territory. We won't let you touch it, even if it's in Asia and we are of Western power. What makes you think it belongs to you? On December 7th, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise attack on the American fleet of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Okay, that's the last straw. We going to war, boys. And this is what brought the US into World War II on the side of the Allies. It also opened up the door for Japan to invade Asian colonies of the United States, the UK, the Netherlands, including the Philippines, Malaya, Hong Kong, Singapore, Burma, and the Dutch East Indies. And the answer to all of this by the United States was an atomic bomb over Hiroshima in 1945. You were asking for it. A bomb being dropped on a completely innocent civilian population. Wait, did I just say that? Does that even make sense?